today is the second installment in the series on the topic of business models. So for those that were with here last week, I'm sure there'll be some fluidity and discussion. And we're thrilled to have Sam as part of our case community. He's a graduate, like you hopefully will be soon, Catherine, of our EMBA program, and has done guest lecturing on campus and is now in our inaugural class of our entrepreneurs in residence at the Veale Institute. And you've probably taken all your SAGES, Brad, well, now that you're a grad student, but Sam's going to be teaching a SAGES seminar this spring. So we're thrilled to have him more engaged on campus, even in this virtual way. And again, Sam, thanks for doing this session today.
Thank you, Michael. That's a short way of Michael saying they're not sick of me yet. This is a workshop format, so I'd like it to be, I've tried to design it to be as interactive as possible. I'd like it to be interactive. And so I would like you to feel free to throw questions into the chat, and we'll try and get to them as part of what we're doing. And then I will ask for input throughout. So just as context, so that you can decide whether or how to value what I say today. I've had the good fortune to start, grow, and sell or take public 4 software companies over the last 3 decades. 2 were pre-internet, so packaged software, and 2 post-internet, so SaaS models. So that affords me the context to give some discussion about business models. I want to talk first about, give you an example, because as Michael said, there is some fluidity to business models, and all of this is in the context of the art of the commercially possible, right? We're not talking academically, and we're not talking artistically, right? A lot of people do some wonderful things creatively. Business models are necessary if you want to have something that is commercially possible. So that's the overall framework. And today, I'd like to talk about why bother with business models, like what exactly is a business model. And then the meat of the workshop is, how do you define a business model? What's a technique? And let's actually use the technique. A key reference here for all of you is Steve Blank's work. His book, The Startup Owner's Manual, was really the first effort to codify this in a way that was accessible to entrepreneurs, startup owners. In his case, using the word startup, but it's great for any early stage business, internal innovation, external innovation. So I encourage you. I can't do all of Steve's work justice, but it's a tremendous resource. And if you don't like the book, there are plenty of videos online as well. So there's that. So I want to tell you about our first business, which was, the business Flash Seats, which you may know because it's local. Started locally, which was identity-based ticketing. So you walked up to the gate and you used your driver's license or credit card to identify yourself instead of having to have a paper ticket. Right? For those of you who know it, we did print this thing called a seat locator, but it wasn't a ticket. You only got it once you had been admitted, and it was good for your seat. So the big thing that everybody saw was we took the ticket, and instead of tokenizing it, right, making you have a paper token of your right to attend the event, what we did is make it identity-based ticketing, make the ticketing virtual. And that's what Flash Sheets did. We started here in Cleveland in 2006, and we got to 48 states and Canada by 2016 when the business was purchased. And we were doing about 24 million tickets a year. And we had, by that time, we also had an app. By the way, when we started, there weren't smartphones in 2006, right? But within a couple of years, there were smartphones. And so you could begin to use not just your driver's license or credit card, but you could get in with your phone because it identified you, and you could transact business. And one of the values of making the ticket digital identity based is that, Catherine could get a ticket. She'd get 2 tickets, and she could invite Brad and transfer the ticket to him, and then he comes up and uses his own ID to get in. So this was a value prop, and mobile made it that much better. So the other thing it did was give access to the secondary market. For those of you who are as old as I am, you remember ticket scalping was a really big thing. And there was an internet evolution of that so that you could trade paper tickets online at places like StubHub and Tickets Now and RazorGator. And the problem was that venues like the Cavalier, like the Quicken Loans Arena, now Rock, whatever it is, not a positive name change, I think, because it's not a field house. But anyway, Quicken Loans Arena was generating about $3 million in value for StubHub, for Tickets Now, for RazorGator. Those were the fees they charged for letting you change your exchange, resell your tickets. And Quicken Loans Arena could access none of it as an average venue, right? Some people tried to deal with that, like Mark Cuban, who, whoops, let me go back one here. Like Mark Cuban, who tried to create his own pay-per ticket marketplace in Dallas for the Mavericks. And he only managed to capture about 10% of the market, maybe 15 at its peak. So he really wasn't able to compete. But with Flash Seats, because the ticket was virtual, right? The ticket existed in a natural marketplace. And so we had a little NASDAQ of ticketing, and all of that revenue was captured inside the Flash Seats exchange as opposed to by third parties. So that's novel, but what about, what else about identity-based ticketing? We were astonished to find, and this is really the true hypothesis of the business, that the best venues in 2006 only knew the identity of 30% of their attendees. I don't know of any industry that exists only knowing 30% of its customers, but they did. And they did because of fandom, right? You love the Cavaliers. You don't really care about Bold laundry detergent, but you care about the Cavaliers. However, that wasn't flying anymore in 2006. So with Flash Seats, right, the venue knows the identity of every customer. Even if Brad can't go at the last minute and invites Bill and transfers his ticket at 5 minutes to tip off, the Cavaliers know and can remarket. But nobody cares about all that, especially the Cavaliers or the Lakers at Staples Center or any of our other teams. Here are the value propositions they cared about. We gave them access to about $1.3 million in revenue that they didn't have before, because that was a share of the secondary ticket market that we let them capture. And we also gave them the ability to know every fan and market to those fans. And by the way, they didn't just get to market to them, but they got to upsell that information to their sponsors and to advertisers and to other people. And by the way, the Quicken Loans Arena could resell that to Disney, to Lady Gaga's management company. I know Doug goes to every Lady Gaga concert. And so it was very valuable to give them this. And those were value propositions. But this doesn't make a business model. And so all of that was very visible. But here's really what makes up the business model. The revenue streams besides the value propositions, right? The revenue streams to Flash Seats. We charged SaaS fees for this platform. We also took a percentage of secondary sales. And it turns out we also ended up with a call center. We had 130 people working in a call center. You thought you were calling Quicken Loans Arena or Ford Field, but you were really calling our call center. And they would answer Ford Field and give you directions, but also, for the first time, they could do secondary ticket sales. Right? If an event was sold out, they go onto the Flash Seats marketplace and they could offer to sell you a ticket from the secondary marketplace as well. And so we got a percentage of call center sales, which was another revenue stream. And some other things that you would want to know about our business: our sales were direct, B2B consultative sales. We had a sales force. They went to arenas or teams and they sold. We only sold at the outset to major venues, which is to say 8,000 seats or above that did advanced reserve seat sales and had a major league team or top 200 acts. That's pretty narrow, right? There are 40,000 venues in the United States, and the major venues there are there are just over 200. So we chose a very small segment of the market. We had 2 data centers because there was no such thing as the Amazon cloud at the time. And so we had to maintain our own data centers, our own computing inside those data centers. Our 2 core teams were our tech team to do all this stuff and our customer success team, helping both venues and fans get it done. A key activity that you have was operating a system in real time, because I want to point out, okay, 80,000 fans who are well lubricated after 3 hours of tailgating who can't get into a venue are not bad PR. That's civil disobedience, right? People start turning over cars and getting really angry if they can't get into the dog pound. So a real-time system meant that, and it also meant that if in fact Brad couldn't go and transferred his ticket to Bill at the last minute, it had to transfer instantaneously, because Brad could do that at 5 minutes to kickoff, and Bill had to get in at 4 minutes to kick off and get into his seat. Also, because we initially used credit cards as a form of ID, we had partners that were credit card companies, and that was kind of important. So now you know really a lot about our business model, which was much less about what was visible and much more about who your customer is, what the customer values, and how you deliver that value at an appropriate cost. This is a business model. And I want to separate this from strategy, because people put those terms together. Ambiguity seems to be a core feature of US English, which is unfortunate. And we tend to take words and expand them and make them more general as opposed to making them more specific. But I want to separate strategy from business model. Okay, a business model are core characteristics of the business that are unlikely to change with normal market variations. Strategies, right, are specific plans to carry out, right, the business model, taking into account current market conditions. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to make that differentiation. And if I accidentally say strategy, you are all free to unmute and yell. So this is unfortunately, this is a great statement, by the way. I love this statement, right? Who's your customer? What does the customer value? Because it's customer focused. And then how do you deliver the value at an appropriate cost? I mean, this is great. But unfortunately, it's a little difficult to act on this prose. So the question is there a framework that is good for helping you first think about this and second validate the business model, right? Which is, can I put how the enterprise works on paper in some way other than this slide? And it turns out that because of Steve Blank's work and another fellow named Alex Ostenwalder, we have a phenomenal tool called the Business Model Canvas. So the Business Model Canvas, right, BMC, right there in the name, is one of the more effective business tools that I've found for a very specific purpose, right? And that is to help you create and then validate a business model. And you'll see 9 areas, and we're going to workshop each of these 9, right? The key areas, by the way, as you start out, when you first engage with the business model canvas, right, are often value propositions and customers, right? And in some cases, key partners, right? So those are the key ones. That's why they're big there, and they're of a focus. And so we're going to dive into the business model canvas. However, there's one thing you have to know before you jump in, and unfortunately, this is not well identified, and that is you really have to make visible your market type. Even Steve Blank says this is important, but he kind of zips through it. And many of these things will bear on your business model, and if you forget this, you can end up with a lot of things on the business model canvas that aren't compatible with the market you're in. But if you remember this and make it very visible, you will reduce the amount of unnecessary ideation and validation you do. And that's why I bring it out, right? You can have a new product into an existing market. So I have, right, there was a time when there were no electric razors. Now there are electric razors. That would be a new product into an existing market, people who shave. Right? You can have a new product into a new market. Anybody give me an example of that? Nobody. Come on.
Uber?
Yeah. So interesting. That one's a multi-sided market, right? Because there's, and I would argue that the new market they went into was not so much for consumers, but for the limo companies, right? Because in every geography, limo companies are not allowed to pick up ad hoc riders. That's the difference between a limo company and a cab. And if any of you are business people, you've known that you've winked at the limo driver as he drove by and he pulled over to the curb and you both agreed that you had made a reservation an hour ago. But that's totally illegal and they'll revoke their limo license if they do it. Right? What Uber gave limo companies access to was a totally new market, which is ad hoc riders. Right? But the other thing is, I mean, new product into a new market are sort of market defining products. And that's a really hard thing. I mean, it's really rare, right? The browser into the internet.
Genome sequencing for health, personal health.
There you go. Right? You can't, that's a totally new market because I don't carry a card in my wallet that has my genome sequence on it so that my doctor can draw conclusions, or at least I didn't, maybe I will. That's a great example, right? New product into an existing market and trying to resegment that market. So you're going to go in as a low-cost entrant because you're trying to resegment. We're totally different than everybody else. Or we're going to resegment as a niche entrant, which is, look, there are all these existing players out there, but we really have something that's going to appeal to a niche. Anybody have examples of these? Either one?
Vizio, when they entered the market for flat screen TVs.
Ah.
To Costco.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a great example. Was not on the tip of my tongue. So you can reset, and by the way, that's a great B2C example, right? You can resegment B2C, you can resegment B2B. And it's important if you're trying to say we are resegmenting, meaning you're creating a new segment for yourself. And it's important to understand that versus I'm a new product into a well-defined existing market and I'm going to play by those rules. The product is unique, but I'm not trying to resegment, right? Lastly, and this one's important, especially in our new global economy, cloning a business model in a new country. Right? It really works over there. Nobody knows about it over here. Or certain aspects of the infrastructure haven't existed, and you can do it here. If you put these up on the wall, they're a great reference point. And as you throw things onto the business model canvas, you look over at the product, at the market type, you're going to go, oh yeah, right. Okay, that has implications. So I want to point out that this is a really important first step. And now let's talk about these three key aspects of the business model canvas. But to do that, I'm going to share a different window here. Everybody see that? Our Veale workshop. So I wanted to give you an example of a business model canvas for the business I just talked about, Flash Seats. Just so you could understand what we were talking about, because I went through some things pretty quickly, but I went through them because of a business model canvas. And this is a mature business model canvas that was the result of many iterations, right? And focusing first here on the value propositions. We had value propositions to two sets of people. By the way, this is Miro. It's a great tool. for workshopping for one or many people, and I encourage you to take a look at it. It's been very productive for me with teams in the remote environment we're in today. So teams and venues, we had these value propositions. They could get secondary ticket sales revenue that they didn't have access to before. Okay, they could get fan identities they didn't have access to before. They could get some margin on their primary ticketing that they didn't have before, because they could release their primary tickets straight to the marketplace instead of putting a quote unquote face value on them. And they could get marketing analytics, and they could get secondary call sales. We also had values to fans, right? Value propositions. Fans were worried when they bought scalp tickets. Even from StubHub, they were worried they were counterfeit. And we brought ease of use, right? Because how many of you, especially if you use these for corporate entertainment, you buy 4 tickets, and then you have to FedEx them or deliver them or somehow get them to your guests, and that was really nuisance. Okay. Now, I want to stress that we validated all of these value propositions. We threw them up. We threw a lot of them up there, and then we went through actually validating the value propositions, which is part of customer discovery, and you can take a look at that workshop. So I'm going to go through each of these segments really quickly, and then we're going to workshop them on a different business. Let's talk all the way over here on the right about customer segments. Our customer segments were major venues. That was major venue owners and major league teams that were responsible for operating venues at times. And so those were our 2 defined customer segments. And those were narrowly defined. Our key partners on the left here had to be credit card processors, because we were using credit cards, frankly, for an unintended purpose, for ID. And they had to be our partners in that, or else we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. Frankly, if you get these 3 things right, the big ones, you should go out. Frankly, if you get these things filled out rather first, then you should go out and validate them first. Right? Then you can come back to everything else on the screen. And for us, let's go over to customer relationships. And I frankly think that this should really be titled, and you'll see it. The reason I put it is every canvas says customer relationships. But what it really is how you're going to get, keep, and grow customers. Okay. And Steve Blank says that, but he doesn't title this Get, Keep, Grow. That relationship doesn't mean anything in a sense, right? So here is where some of the novel aspects of flash seats that made it possible for us to succeed are visible, where they might not be visible to you elsewhere. Each league has best practice meetings. So the NFL said, and by the way, David Stern, the former commissioner of the NBA, is the one who invented this idea. He said 35 years ago or 40 years ago, we compete on the court, but we don't compete in the back office, because each of us has our own geography. So if somebody's got a secret for ticketing or group sales or how to operate an arena better, we ought to be sharing that to improve the entire league's effectiveness. And this was novel at the time. Before that, all the teams felt like they were competing in everything. And so he started to hold league best practice meetings, and all the other leagues quickly glommed on. But I will point out the opportunity. If we got a single team in a league that said, hey, we're making $1.3 million more than we were last year, and we have all this fan data, and they presented that at a league best practice meeting, every other team in the league wanted to do it almost instantly. So this is a way to get customer relationships that is non-traditional, that was a core aspect of our business model, right? And which was not in the original business model canvas, but we figured it out pretty quickly. So novel ways to get customers. And by the way, there were 31 other digital ticketing companies attempting to innovate in ticketing when we entered the market. We identified them. We looked at them all. Okay, not a single one of them did this, right? So what's interesting is they were all worried about a novel product, and they were not worried at all about unique aspects of their business plan. For example, novel ways to get customers, right? And also, we did revenue case studies. Teams care a lot about revenue, and we did revenue case studies. The industry was not as sophisticated as, say, finance or or healthcare, and so there weren't these industry trade publications, save one, that did all these detailed business cases. And so our revenue case studies were important. And the other thing we did was, we provided analytics free for at a low level, so that to keep our customers. We would give them insights once a month, so that they would buy the integrations, and we gave non-customers insights, so that they would buy us. So anyway, this part is about ways that you will get, keep, and grow customers. And it's entirely possible that you would simply decide here you're going to go through well-known or predictable or traditional routes, but I encourage you to think hard about anything that your combination of market type, market, and customer allow you to do in a novel way, better or different than your competitors. One thing that's very standard, channels, right? Channels, lovely word. Some industries talk about them a lot, some don't, right? This is just, how are you going to get to the customers? And right, so there's direct sales, you can do franchises, you can do distributors, resale, wholesale, white label. There are a lot of things to do for channels. Ours was a consultative sale. We were delivering a hardware plus software solution, a generic hardware, Windows mobile devices, but we had to understand, we had to convince the arenas that they could get 80,000 people in faster than paper tickets. That was their biggest concern. So we had to do direct consultative sales, and we decided we put that in the business model, believing that we would have to do that convincing. And the reason it's important that it gets up here is so that you can, again, so you can decide you can deliver this at an appropriate cost. And so our cost was going to be maintaining a direct B2B sales force. Make sense? And by the way, questions, feel free in real time. Speaking of real time, let's go over here to key activities, right? These are activities that are going to impact either your ability to deliver the service or the cost or revenue, right? So real-time system operation is not trivial. We had 3 levels of redundancy that wouldn't be necessary for, say, QuickBooks, right, or Microsoft Word. But all the information for every ticket was on every gate handheld device every 5 or 6 seconds. That information was redundantly stored on 2 servers per venue, and then it was redundantly stored at our data centers. Because if you can't get 80,000 people in the venue, it's a real problem, right? In real time. So that we knew was going to be a significant activity. It was going to have implications for the business. It was going to have real cost. And so that's why it's up there. We had to have a human component to our business. This was not a pure SaaS business. We had inbound telephone sales and support. That was there was a threshold condition in this industry. Know the industry? We didn't know that going in. We were ready to sell our system to everybody, and they said, hey, you've got to support telephone sales. Right? So that got added later when we went out with a first round of validation for the business model. And we ended up doing event support, understanding that for special events, people would pay us to help support the ticketing for the event. So those were key activities that factored into our cost and revenue streams. Right? Key resources, these are things you're going to have to spend, and key resources really come in 4 flavors: physical assets, financial assets, intellectual property, and production components, right? If you will, raw materials, right? And so for us, we needed a phenomenal tech team. We needed a phenomenal customer success team. We knew those were going to be key resources for us because of the industry characteristics. We needed data centers at the time. By the time we sold the company, we didn't have any data centers. Obviously, we were in Amazon's cloud. And lastly, we thought that patents were going to be an important resource. And I'll tell you why. The industry was a monopoly when we entered it. Ticketmaster had a 93% share. Okay, so we thought that, and they had no intellectual property. We thought that intellectual property protection was going to be important because they had a lot of money. and we felt like they could throw a lot of technologists at things if we didn't protect it. I will take this moment to differentiate strategy, because the strategy for using that asset, Ticketmaster, we believed that would be an important asset. Later, Ticketmaster tried to freeze the market strategy. So they went out to everybody and said, hey, we're going to have that exact same thing they have in 2 years. Do not switch. Okay, now contracts in the ticketing world are 5 years, 5 to 6 years. So they were trying to get people to re-up for 5 to 6 years, figuring we weren't going to survive. Our strategy against the freeze the market strategy was to go out with, we started to do a lot of PR and buy a lot of blog content on our patents. And then our salespeople would go in and say, hey, nobody can do what we're going to do, not Ticketmaster, not anybody, for 20 years. We have patents. Now, that was a strategy that used this asset, right? If they had not tried a freeze the market strategy, if they had not tried freeze the market tactic, we wouldn't have adopted that strategy for the patents. We just might have just held those patents and waited. And if Ticketmaster infringed, we would have sued them. So that's the difference between a business model, which says patents will be valuable because there's a monopoly and they will have multiple ways to compete, and a strategy which says, oh, they're doing that right now. Here is the whole conceptual way we're going to fight. Maybe the most obvious components of the business model are cost structure, data center operation, right, for us, call center staffing, and credit card fees were three huge parts of our cost structure. And revenue streams we've already talked about. So this in total is a business model. And innovations that let you succeed, that make your business sustainable, but more importantly, give you advantage, can occur in any one of these 9 blocks. And I want to underscore that. Everybody focuses on product characteristics, right? They really focus on, we're gonna give you a better product. Arguably, right? You know of several businesses where the quote unquote product is not that different, but it's in the way they sell it. For example, right? Gillette innovated. It used to be the razor handle was expensive and the blades were cheap, but the blades are the things you buy frequently. So Gillette invented we'll give you the handle free, but the blades are expensive and they only fit our handles. And then when that became a real nuisance because the blades were really expensive and they were easy to shoplift, so they were always locked up, and it was a nuisance to go get the blades. And by the way, that price kept staring your face. They kept ratcheting that up, and that price looked, so it was a pain to get, and they looked expensive. And Harry's came out and said, hey, for a low cost per month, we're going to send you what you need, and you don't have to go to the store, and you don't have to encounter all that nuisance. Their model was not in the product at all, right? Same handle, same razor. They said, maybe we can change the way in which we get customers, in which they pay for it, right? So not in the product per se. So the reason you get this business model canvas out there, let everybody contribute to it, throw everything you can on it that would fit in your market, and then validate it, is because you can find really novel things like the league best practice meetings, which ended up making our sales astonishingly efficient. All right, enough said about flash seats. I think it's important that we work on a business of our own. So Doug here on the call was really important last workshop in helping me understand how important pizza sauce was to him and his pizza sauce making process. So I figured I'd take a business we all know and see if we can workshop together a way for Doug to take this important skill he has and make a real business out of it. Not that the Veale Center wants to lose him, but you know, maybe they'll add an 8th floor to the building, and that's where the pizza den will be. So I will say that maybe pizza is its own intrinsic value proposition, but it's not unique. And so I'm gonna, let's talk about value propositions, right? They've got to be anchored in customer value perceptions. It's one reason I chose pizza. You're all familiar with it. So you are all legitimate customers, and I will let you assess your own value perception. And as we think about market characteristics, this is an existing product into an existing market. I'm going to assume. I mean, there may be 6 or 7 non-pizza eaters in the United States, but I'm going to assume it's too small a market, unless Doug thinks otherwise. Maybe he's discovered a new market. So new product. I mean, existing product into an existing market. And I want to talk about, value propositions. And remember, it's not just about the product, right? It could be about the packaging. It could be about how we deliver the product. It could be about, like Harry's. It could be about the way that you pay for the product and in effect rebuy it. So this is the very first stage. Doug has collected all of you and knows he loves pizza and wants to create a business around it. And he's asking for your ideas for things that would be novel value propositions around pizza. So anybody want to start? Throw in a potential novel value prop around pizza?
Unusual toppings.
Okay, right. Excellent. Others?
Different kind of bread for the dough. A different dough for the piece.
Right.
Made quickly, efficiency.
Give me a little more on that. Was that you, Catherine?
Yeah, that's me. Like, you're feeding college students. They're hungry. They just want to pick up their pizza and go. You don't want to take too long.
Right.
Maybe a wood burning oven, so it's fast. To Catherine's point, like the type of pizza.
I cannot type right now. Thank you. Okay, so can we? That's great. So we're gonna. Because that gives a particular characteristic to the pizza. Other value props?
How about square pizzas?
I like it. Now, what you can begin to do as you do this, and I love that thought, right, is generalize it to the level at which you can practically test it, right? Because if I set up interviews if I go do a person on the street interview right now in University Circle, I just hop out Matt's window there and I run over to University Circle and I interview all 6 people on the sidewalk with their masks on, I hope. And I say, hey, do you like square pizza? Right? I might be wasting the opportunity to say, imagine your pizza could be any shape you want, right? So as you throw anything on this segment, generalize it to the maximum level that you can test your hypothesis. Okay? So that's a useful thing to guide your questions as you validate. Anything else here? Now, by the way, you're all focusing, and I want to point this out because it is exactly what we all do, including me, okay, on the characteristics of the pizza. This is Doug's Pizza Den.
I'll say accessibility, because I live in a place where there are only maybe 2 options that will deliver.
Right.
I say, Sam, in COVID times, I was going to say contactless pickup or delivery.
Nice. There you go. Okay. I like it.
Also with the accessibility, the time of day that it's available.
Say access, because it could be pickup or delivery. Oh, timing of it. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Like places that are open later or earlier because we don't all live on the same schedule.
There you go.
I don't think this applies anymore given the situation, but I'm thinking like if you had this accessible like at a parking lot near a major venue, that might make it kind of a unique niche kind of market area.
Okay. So this is what happens with business model canvases, right? Everybody, we can group all of the things we've talked about into, in effect, a single location model, right? Except for, and I want to capture that, right? Which is, and I want to generalize it. I don't have the right term quite here, but let's call it, for the moment, because this is not specific enough, and I apologize, the adjective's not coming to mind. But I want to point out that as you begin to do this, right, we begin to gather value propositions that relate to the pizza itself, and then those that might relate to how I get to it. What about distributed access, right? And then those that relate to the timing, right? I want it now, and anytime I want it now, right? 2:31 a.m. I want my pizza. So what you'll find is that your value propositions on the business model canvas aggregate, and oftentimes you can find a lever here around which you can build a differentiated value proposition. So periodically, let everybody throw things on the wall. The judgment is low, right? Permission meter is high here. Throw out anything, right? I thought this idea, and I didn't capture it in terms of distributed access, right? But I mean, you can call, I mean, maybe it's simply this, parking lot access. Right? If I could walk into the parking lot, and as I walk by, there's the pizza stand, and I grab my pizza in the car and take it home. What a great idea. By the way, let's go out and do that. I think we're done here. Let's go start. I'm kidding. So I don't want to spend more time on value proposition, but here's my point. Throw all these ideas up here as a team. Go ahead and group them. You'll get other thoughts. State them in a way they can be tested. And then go through customer discovery. Get out and ask as many people as you practically can. Iterate again on the business model and do it until this canvas remains relatively static. With each interview, you're getting validation and you're not getting things tossed out. Now let's go on to a couple other key, because I want to give you the opportunity to think about them. Customer segments. Who are our customer segments here? Because it is not all 7 billion people on the planet, which is tempting to say, but not true. Anybody want to just articulate a customer segment for Doug, who's just completely on the fence?
Working people with no time.
There you go. All right. So that's right. So, okay. So working people with no time is a key issue here. Our observation is they love pizza, but they can't really get to it easily. They want it off, whatever. So we've got a customer segment. I'm gonna suggest that you make these as specific as possible. You'll recall that we had, between the U.S. and Canada, if you went all the way large to small venues, there were over 40,000 venues that we could have addressed, and we chose to address, at the time, I think 209. Eventually, by the way, we broadened the business down to the next level, we started to serve that entire market. But we went out with a single customer segment to serve, to make the business sustainable. And I encourage you to make these as narrow as possible, right? And then validate that they exist, that you can get to them, and that in fact, they respond to the value proposition strongly that you have here. So customer segments, these are very tightly defined groups of customers that are addressable. Market addressable.
Vegan,
Go ahead.
vegan.
There you go. So, by the way, if we're really great at this and we have truly vegan options, we could serve two groups that seem to be unrelated, working people with no time and vegans, right? That's a legitimate thing to do if they're both addressable, if they both respond strongly to our value propositions, and if we don't incur significant additional cost. So let's move on to customer relationships. Get, keep, grow. How are we getting our customers, our business people with no working time? Let's start with them.
Contact businesses in the area.
Ooh, how about that? How many of you thought about going through a business in the area? Let's go through area businesses. One of the largest successful programs in effect, business marketing, right? Coupon books existed for students. You buy a $20 coupon book and you get $300 worth of coupons, but it was a difficult process. It was hard to get the books, and the businesses found it hard to distribute. And a student had the idea that he could get these books printed. He could get the businesses to pay him to print them, and he went to the housing authority at his university and said, "This is going to make you guys look awfully good if you put one of these in every student room," because that's what he couldn't do, is distributed them to 12,000 students. And the building, the housing group in the university said, "This will make it look great." And so they were his total delivery mechanism. And it was an incredible way to do it, right? So thinking about different ways to either deliver the product or to, and that created his, that's how he got customers, right? For this is, so that's a great idea. Go through businesses, right? This is an employee benefit. So that's a good thing. That's a good get. How about keep? So,
Loyalty program.
Okay, tell me more about what you mean by that.
Buy 4 pizzas, get the 5th one free.
Excellent. All right. So loyalty means tracking, right? If you don't shop at Kohl's, go to Kohl's. I don't understand their business model, because what I seem to see happen is that you go in, they give you Kohl's cash, they give you coupons, and you walk out with a bag full of stuff and you haven't paid anything. But I'm kidding. But they're astonishing at loyalty, right? Their entire business differentiator is loyalty. That is their get, because they can offer people initial deals, and it is their keep and grow strategy. Kohl's Cash is a miraculous growth strategy worth looking at. How about that's get, that's keep. How about grow? Grow means that I either take James's revenue and increase it, or James helps me get customers.
So a referral program?
Yeah.
Nice. Tell me more, Catherine. How might you do that?
You give us a customer a discount or some other special if they get you customers.
That's great. That's great. Right? So the reason I asked how might you do that, these have cost implications. They might have key resource implications. They might have key activity. If they're standard, great. If there's not software out there to do them, they might have implications, and that's why you have to make it as specific as possible on each of these, because you want to make sure you understand the implications for the rest of the business model canvas. And that's a great example, right? There's some great programs that give you something and the customer something, right? We all know that there are 2-for-1 pizza deals. What if you morphed that? And by the way, cost of materials is not the expense for pizza shops. You haven't figured that out from the way Pizza Hut does deals. So in terms of Catherine's suggestion, right? What if instead of saying 2-for-1 deal, you said, Catherine, if you buy a pizza for a friend, you get one free. Now, Catherine feels great because she's gifted somebody. She gets the pizza free, so she kind of feels like she's bought herself a pizza, but she's getting that additional gifting. And by the way, the pizza shop gets the IDs of both because it's only available through delivery. So lots of ways to think about this. The reason to be as specific as possible in Get, Keep, Grow is first so that you identify unique opportunities like the go-through area businesses. And second, so that you understand and can remember the implications on key activities and resources. I'm going to skip channels because I trust you all to think about channels, because I want to get to a couple others here, which are key activities and key resources. We've talked a lot about the opportunity side here, and that may be the fun side to talk about businesses unless you're in private equity. But the cost side of the business is what is the last piece of the business model, right? And can deliver that value at an affordable cost, right? Can the business be sustainable at scale? And you have to validate this stuff, or else you'll have a wonderful idea and you'll do a lot of work and then it won't be sustained. So if we're looking at what we have put up here right now, what would key activities be for the business? One, obviously, by the way, would be make pizza. You don't get to put that one in there. It's too easy. What's a key activity if we're going through local area businesses? Is there any key activity, right? Going to really be actually material for the business to do it if we are going through area businesses?
We need to advertise.
That's excellent. Any other nuances to that?
Packaging.
Okay. So a key activity, what would make packaging, tell me more about that.
Well, you got to put your name in the box where you're at, and there's a lot of extra room for other stuff.
Ah, great. So we have not listed, by the way, an opportunity that I just heard, which is the box, right? I've seen some hole-in-the-wall pizza shops that buy generic boxes. They don't even have the name on it. Some just throw a little sticker on it as they're doing it. And some, of course, like Pizza Hut, have custom shapes and are beautifully printed. So we just heard a value, we just heard an opportunity in unique packaging potentially, right? And that's a value hypothesis to get out there and test. Could you partner? Could you, would Spectrum care if you sold cable, put a big cable ad on your pizza? Could we white label pizza? Could you deliver Spectrum pizza one week? I don't know, right? But if you put this up there and let your ideation team, right, whoever you like to ideate with, look at it and get it up there, not only will you realize it's an important activity, and it is if you're not doing standard packaging, but it's a key activity. All right, what key resources are we going to need for Doug's Pizza Den?
You're going to need staff of some sort.
Go.
Money.
Hang on one sec. So we need a team, right? Unless we use the automated pizza machine in Sears ThinkBox, but that's not on the chart right here. By the way, that could be the parking lot pizza maker. I'm just saying. Anyway, I don't think it was made for outdoors. So the team, who else had a key resource that we need?
Money.
Yeah, good. So, I mean, it's important to get it up here, right? If Doug needs money to get this off the ground, if our team, we're all Doug's team, if we need money to get this off the ground because it's not sitting at home in big bags, then it's important to get that up here.
You need a kitchen. And
okay. Excellent. And I like the way We said that kitchen, right? Because what we didn't say is a building where we make pizza. Because there are now things called, what, you've all heard of ghost kitchens, right? There are businesses popping up thanks to COVID that have no place to go consume their food. They are delivery only. They look online, the brand, in order to make you think that it's appealing, some of them show a lot of pictures of what look like a legitimate seating restaurant, and they actually don't exist. So it's pretty interesting. So the way to state this again is the most general way that is testable, right? And kitchen is a good way to think about it, right? Because by the way, we don't necessarily, I know Doug likes to make his own sauce, but we don't necessarily need to be the ones making the pizza. We might outsource that kitchen. We need a kitchen. We know that. Can't make pizza without a kitchen, but. All right.
I'll add to that permits.
Hey.
Whether it's your kitchen or somebody else's, you want to guarantee that it's legitimate.
There you go.
Catherine knows from experience.
And that's like, right, intellectual property, other things. There are things that are unique to certain businesses that have processes that go with them. And that once you get them, you may not be able to operate without them, and they may be a tremendous asset once you have them. So that's great. All right.
Sam, I just want to give a quick time check. We're about at the hour moment.
Yep.
We can run a few minutes over if folks want to stay. I know as we get into the meat of doing these exercises, it's hard to it's hard to pull back up. But I just wanted to give a quick check-in that we're at the hour.
Yeah, it is. And the reason for the workshop approach here, it really is to illustrate what we've illustrated. I don't think that there is, unless you're Elon Musk, this is not rocket science. If you do not have each of these 9 elements, you don't have a fully fleshed out business model, and you may go down a path that is neither scalable nor sustainable. That's the point about a business model. It makes you think about things other than a product. And as a founder, I know you can sometimes get overly focused on a product. Or if you're a sales-focused founder, you can get overly focused on the sales aspect of it, as opposed to all of these aspects. The business model canvas is one of, it's an incredibly effective tool. And the goal here is to go through a number of iterations of this, lay out your first, based on your expertise and your team's expertise, everything you can, then go test your hypotheses. Come back and use that to modify the business model until it stays relatively the same after a whole series of a whole series of investigations of each one of these. And then as each area begins to stay relatively the same, that's when you can start putting capital behind it because you've fleshed out the business model. And now I'm going to go back to one other piece here, which is, I'm going to go by this real quick because we're at time, and talk about pivot, right, which is the least understood, most misused term in this, which is, right, in the whole process. It simply means a material change to one of the 9 key business model hypotheses. So there are times when you take this all the way down the road, you're through 5 iterations, you're almost ready to go, and then you hit a stumbling block. A pivot is a very legitimate thing to do when you say, uh-oh, I don't think I can address that market segment. I either have to change the market segment, or I have to find a way, I have to change the get, keep, grow, because my get, keep, grow methods won't address my market segment. I've just discovered why. A pivot is not saying I was going to design a floral, I had a floral delivery business, and now I'm pivoting to pizza. That's that, and I think somehow that's in there. So let me simply say that I encourage you not to, if you end up, after 3 or 4 or 5 iterations, and you find one of those that you really were down the path, and only a detailed level of validation got you to realize that the partners would never engage. Credit card companies will never engage with us. If that didn't happen, flash sheets probably wouldn't have happened. And we might have not discovered that until we got into material discussions with them. And at which point, right, we might have had to pivot something in there. And if that only changed one of the 9, and it's perfectly acceptable to do in the business model. And I want you to understand that, but I also don't want you to think that changing everything in the business is a pivot, because investors won't like that. All right. Questions?
I just wonder if can you use this if you have an existing product, let's say you're selling in the United States and you want to take that product into another geography like Japan, for example. Is this exercise useful in that respect?
It is actually, and if you're especially, I mean, in effect, I would liken that to cloning a business in a new geography, in a new country, and this is very useful. James, maybe the most important thing is that whoever's in the room to do the initial ideation, and it has to be willing to and able to question the value assumptions, right? Because they're not the same market to market. Right? My head of sales, you know, had spent 5 years in Japan, and regularly talk to me about what would and wouldn't fly in Japan because of the different value propositions that, you know, the different consumer values in Japan. And so it's a perfectly legitimate exercise. And frankly, even as you do, you know, we started using this for even minor product enhancements. It's an incredibly useful tool for allowing collaborative business model creation and revision. And groups, as Weatherhead will tell you, for all those you, Catherine, who's in the course there, in the school, groups make better decisions when they're appropriately facilitated, right? And so if you run a good group decision process, groups make better decisions, and the business model canvas, properly used, is a great group decision process facilitator. So we almost never, I mean, I can't think of a time after we started to use it that it wasn't up on the wall for some group or another, or multiple groups. And by the way, keep the iterations. It's useful to roll through past history. And as new people join the team, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can walk through your thought process by looking through business model canvases.
So I'm hearing you say it can be used as a template for existing businesses looking to expand or remodel their business.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve Blank doesn't address that. Alex Ostenwilder in some of his work does. He's not quite as good a writer as Steve, but the tool is great. And Alex, in some of what he's done, talks about not just the startup uses of the business model canvas.
Who's that again? Alex who?
Ostenwilder. Yeah, Doug. We'll get you a link to this Miro board, and there's a link to. Oh, there you go. Yeah, So there you go. So I will put on the. I will send to Doug a couple links, and he'll get them out.
Thank you.
Well, great. Sam, thank you. And thanks for everybody for joining. I mean, what I've enjoyed about having Sam as a guest speaker in a classroom and this sort of rolling the sleeves up and workshopping and engaging around both the experience at Veritix as well as future pizza competition for the burgeoning boutique pizza makers in town. So we'll see what comes out of this.